An assessment is a snapshot, a picture of a property showing what it's worth in the real estate market on a specific day. In the case of a revaluation, on the 1st of January. This notice has been sent to about 150,000 Milwaukee property owners, the goal to have assessed value equal market value.
We're looking at what the property would have sold for if it was offered on the open market. I know that's confusing for a lot of people, especially if you're not thinking of selling your home. Sometimes people don't quite understand, well, I don't want to sell my home, so why are they assessing it at market value? But that's what state law requires.
The reason it's required is to assure fairness, that we share equally in the costs of city government services. Many of the services we want and need are paid for by the property tax. Our fair share of that tax and those costs is determined by accurate and up-to-date assessments. In order to place a value, city appraisers like Laura Martinez visit as many taxable properties as possible. She showed us what she does and what things can affect the assessment.
A lot of the properties haven't been inspected for a long time, and because we have records on each and every property in the city of Milwaukee, we'd like to make sure those records are current. So I would explain that starting from the bottom up, I'll go through and make sure that what we have is corrected. All right, Tom, we've got the living room here. And generally what I look at in a living room is your floor covering. I'm going to mark down some carpet. I look at the ceilings, I look at the walls. What I'm checking for mainly is like plaster cracks, anything like, say, if your furnace shot out soot and your ceilings were damaged, I might put that down as far as the note is concerned.
Here we have a fireplace. What does that do?
That's going to increase the value. A lot of the homes in the city have artificial fireplaces. Those wouldn't increase the value, but if it's a working fireplace, it is going to increase the value of the home. This room has obviously been worked on quite a bit by the homeowner. They've added wallpaper, window coverings, rugs on the floor, beautiful furnishings. But that's not something that we at the assessor's office look at. We look at the structure itself. A lot of times homeowners will maybe take a door off of a bedroom that's downstairs and use it for a den or a library or a family room like this one is being used. But we at the assessor's office would still consider it a bedroom. When I look in the bathroom, what I'm looking at is generally people have a ceramic tile. I'll look at the condition of the tile, make sure that it's still all holding together. I'll look at the floor. A lot of times ceramic tile will generally be in good shape or not. I'll look at that. I'll look if there's a vanity underneath the sink here. Look for new fixtures versus the original fixtures. I look at the tub, see if it's an original. I'll also make notes of whether there's a shower over the tub or not. And look up at the ceiling to see if there's any problems as far as moisture buildup or cracking, or maybe there's a second bath upstairs and things are happening up there that are affecting the ceiling. When I come into a kitchen, for record-keeping purposes, we keep track of the linear feet of cabinet space. We might keep track of whether there's a disposal, built-ins. What really affects the value of a kitchen, though, is whether it's been remodeled or not. If just, you know, you have one built-in dishwasher, but you have your old cabinet space and very little counter space, no, it's not going to make a big difference in the assessment. Okay, in the basement, I'll make a note of what kind of water heater we have and the gallons. I'll make a note of the furnace. A lot of times on the furnace, I'll also check to see if there's central air attached, because sometimes they're behind bushes or under decks and I can't see them. I'll take a look at the electrical box, see if the property's been updated as far as with circuit breakers or not. Now these things that I'm looking at, even though they don't affect the value except for central air, they're mainly record keeping. What's going to constitute a rec room when I'm looking in the basement is whether you have some floor covering, wall covering, and some ceiling covering. Now let's say this basement room here had a lowered ceiling, it had some carpet on the floor, but the walls were still just painted. To me, that's not a full rec room. A rec room is going to have your studs, your either drywall or maybe plywood, the ceiling covered and the floor covered. Otherwise, it's just maybe some extra room in the basement for the kids to play in, but it wouldn't be constituting a rec room for our purposes as far as the assessment is concerned.
In general, minor repairs will not increase in assessment.
Something like replacing the furnace when the old one is done, replacing a water heater, although that's good maintenance for the house and that does make a house more desirable, it doesn't have a direct impact on the assessment itself. Same thing with sidewalk repairs, gutter repairs, window repairs. That doesn't really constitute an increase in value. It's more considered maintenance. General good maintenance versus improvements.
A citywide revaluation raises many questions and some challenges. The first step, stop in or call the assessor's office. Look through the assessment rolls. Compare your value with comparable properties. During what's called an open book session through May 20th, meet one-on-one with an appraiser.
Just by giving us a call or coming in to visit us, we can often clear up misunderstandings or questions that they may have about the assessment. After they do that, if they still think that the assessment is just not correct, there are appeal procedures.
The filing of a formal objection form begins the appeal process. This must be done by the third Monday in May. Your complaint goes first to a group of assessment supervisors. If they reject the appeal, the next step is the Board of Tax Review, a citizen group independent of the assessor.
It's a very fine opportunity to express themselves. Instead of arguing with the assessor, they come before an impartial board of citizens.
State law says the assessor's estimate is presumed correct, so you have to present strong proof to the contrary. The board is not the place to complain about the amount of your tax or that local government is spending too much. Like the assessor, you must provide solid facts to prove your argument.
Just talk and accusations, that's not evidence. So we try to look for solid evidence.
If the board refuses to change your assessment, you can appeal to circuit court. The new assessments will be used on the property tax bills you'll pay next December, and taxes are the main worry of many whose homes are revalued. But assessors caution that higher property values do not necessarily mean higher taxes. That number won't be known until November.
The inaugural meeting of the 1996 to 2000 Milwaukee Common Council will now come to order. I would ask our City Clerk, Ron Leonard, to please call the roll.
The historic and ornate chamber of the Common Council was packed with city elected officials, members of their families, friends, and constituents. It's a ceremony we won't see again until the year 2000.
At this time, I would ask all members of the 1996 to 2000 Common Council to please rise for the oath of office.
The 17 council members pledged to support the Constitution, to faithfully discharge the duties of their office to the best of their ability. They had the opportunity to introduce their families and friends, thank those who voted for them, and in some cases, talk about the future.
I'd like to welcome the new people, and I know we will have as good a council this time as we did last time. I was very, very proud to serve not only my district, but my city.
I close by saying I look forward to working with my colleagues, working with you as we move ahead and hopefully forge a progressive Milwaukee.
We had a wonderful council this last 4 years. It truly was a pleasure to serve with all of these people. And I know that given the talent of the people that are going to be joining us for this next 4 years, I expect that we're going to be doing great things for the city of Milwaukee, and I'm happy to be a part of it.
As we go into the 21st century, those that follow us, they will say of our term and of our work that we paved the way.
The oath of office was then given to other constitutional officers. City Attorney Grant Langley, sworn in for a third term, heads the office that served as the lawyer for the city since 1846.
The obligation of this government is to ensure that we build a stronger and better city. And I hope 4 years ago we can look back, those of us who are elected, or those of us who may not be here, and at least say that we have done good. We have done some good things for this city, that this is a better city in which to live and work.
City Treasurer Wayne Widow was first elected to his post in 1976. He was sworn into a sixth term. And the city's Chief Financial Officer, W. Martin Morix, took the oath of office for a second time.
Later, our bond ratings up, cities in very, very sound financial health. And this isn't a solo act. It's a result of a government, a mayor, fellow elected officials who realize that sometimes there's no such thing as a free lunch. And while there are many worthwhile causes, they have to be handled financially prudently and responsibly. And I'm pleased I've been part of that process.
Milwaukee Mayor John Norquist then formally began his third term in office. In his inaugural address, the city's 37th chief executive said elected officials have an obligation to identify problems facing Milwaukee, but it's even more important to solve them.
The key to Milwaukee's future and the future of America's cities is for the government to empower its citizens, to give them freedom that allows people in Milwaukee to prosper. Freedom empowers individuals to make decisions for themselves and build their own success. Freedom in turn builds the city's success. And we have an obligation to the citizens of Milwaukee to remove obstacles from their path to success and freedom. Crime in our city is the greatest impediment to that freedom and that success. While crime is lower in many categories, we must cut crime much, much more. We will add more officers to our police department in the coming budget. We must help our citizens also enjoy economic freedom by aggressively creating jobs, bringing businesses to our city, working to strengthen existing Milwaukee businesses. We must guarantee parents freedom of choice in their children's education. I feel rage and anger when I hear of parents, including many city employees, who feel that they must leave the city to get the education that they want for their children. We must keep city spending below the rate of inflation. We must cut property taxes so that our people have more money to spend on the things that are important in their lives. We have an obligation, we have a duty to improve upon what was started here 150 years ago, and to make certain that Milwaukee becomes a city of greater freedom, opportunity, and prosperity. Thank you very much.
The inaugural meeting ended with music, led by former Mayor Frank Zeidler and Reverend Ernest Norquist, father of the present mayor. Market Hall was one of about a half a dozen buildings that housed aldermen and city offices in the 1800s. In 1895, the current City Hall became the center of government. The council's size has varied, peaking in 1899 when there were 46 aldermen from 23 districts. Today, the council is made up of 17 members from 17 districts, each elected to a 4-year term. At their organizational meeting, they re-elected Alderman John Kolwitz as president.
And let me make it abundantly clear that I intend to harness with your collective help the talent and energies of each and every member of this council to the fullest possible extent.
Common Council members are elected on a nonpartisan basis. That is, they run without party label. The 17 districts they represent each contain about 37,000 people. Council members are legislators, enacting laws helping to shape city policy. They are also service coordinators, working to maintain the quality of service in their districts. Most of their work is done at the committee level.
As a city, we all share common problems, concerns, and hopes for the future. Like it or not, our destinies are intertwined with each other. Our success will depend in large part upon our collective resolve, the ability of resources, and how effectively we can work together as a legislative body with Mayor John Norquist and with the citizens whom we are privileged to represent.
And Alderman Kolwitz promised that all council members will have an opportunity to take a leadership role as the city works to reduce crime, create and retain jobs, and preserve neighborhoods.
Milwaukee is, and always has been, a great and a good city, but the best is yet to come if we all do our part.
The only time many of us might think at all about the Port of Milwaukee is when we drive over the Hone Bridge. We may see a ship docked at a terminal, the petroleum tanks, or the mounds of tarp-covered road salt, but we're all affected by what happens there on that piece of land known as Jones Island.
I think it helps attract businesses. I think it helps the community in terms of its vibrancy, that we do have an opportunity to get to the world markets. It improves the quality of life for your average citizens in ways they can't even see or appreciate. But it is something that is very real and helps them every day, and it has an economic impact on the community.
The economic impact includes a payroll for port operations of nearly $60 million. Nearly 1,500 people work here, many of them minority residents of the city. Most port expenses are paid for by its customers.
We generate down here about $5 million a year in tax revenues. And at the end of the day, the port's operating budget is funded out of revenues that we derive from providing our services. And so effectively the city's getting these economic benefits and they're being paid for by the users of the port. I think that's a great deal for the city and certainly the citizens of Milwaukee.
For many years, the river was our port. Schooners brought their shipments to the grain elevators, lumber yards, and factories that lined both banks of the river, but it became too crowded. Jones Island answered the need for an outer harbor. It had been a residential area, home to some 1,500 people, a center of commercial fishing. The city acquired the land in 1914, and by the mid-20s, most traces of the residents were gone, and many harbor-related improvements had been made. Port offices are located at the south end of Jones Island.
Are we really doing a service for the taxpayers and the citizens of this community? And that's the function we serve. So it's public-minded citizens who really believe that the city's worth our time to ensure quality service from the port.
For many years, the port was strictly in the shipping business. When Director Zali was hired, he was told to rethink the port's role.
And he basically decided that the shipping part of it, while critical to the future of the port, was not the only business we should be in. He viewed us, and that is so critical for a leader to do that, to rethink what you're all about, and changed our mission from strictly being involved with shipping to transportation and distribution, to look at the Port of Milwaukee as a transportation distribution center.
New markets and shipping sources resulted from the new role. The port began to provide a variety of transportation-related services. They include bulk cargo storage, container operations, bulk liquid transfer, warehousing, and material handling services.
The port, like any other business, does change. Its business cycles change. Its business mix changes. It better change if it's going to be a healthy and vibrant area.
The introduction of inland river barges 3 years ago was among the changes. The barge service helped push total port tonnage to its largest amount in 25 years.
Inland river barges historically have been able to come up the Mississippi and Illinois river systems as far as Chicago. We knew this, and we started asking, was there any reason that they couldn't come to Milwaukee? And by asking that first question, it put us on the road to seeking Coast Guard permission to allow the barges to come here to Milwaukee. And it's simply what it does is it adds another choice for consumers of transportation in our region in a market where choice is everything.
Transportation is always a cost of business. It's something we all think about to be competitive. And without a port as a distribution and transportation center for businessmen to see as an alternate way to get goods out to the world markets, I think the overall transportation costs of this community, the business community, would rise dramatically. It's just an important alternative way of looking at how to get goods out to the world markets.
Milwaukee is one of the more diverse ports on the Great Lakes. Among its many commodities, shipments of coal for steam and electricity generated by the Valley Power Plant, the thousands of tons of salt we rely on each winter on our streets, steel for the many steel bending industries, and the containers from around the world with products ranging from computers to foreign beers. What does the future hold for the Port of Milwaukee?
We live with competition. It's something we welcome. It keeps our menu fresh. It keeps our people creative here in the port. And it will be the key to us being successful in the future.
Deregulation, trade restrictions, protectionism, and rising seaway tolls are among the challenges as the shipping industry continues to change. The Port of Milwaukee has been flexible in the past, and officials say that will continue as they face a challenging future in a competitive world of transportation.